Progressive Planet develops critical low carbon and carbon sequestering solutions for the cement, agriculture, and animal care sectors. The company just released its Q3 financial results for the January quarter, which showed solid improvement and with growing revenues and margins. CEO Steve Harpur is here to join us to discuss the improving business outlook and the company's blue sky initiatives in the cement and agricultural industries. I'm Martin Gagel with Market Radius Research. It's Tuesday, March the 12th. Please remember this is neither recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Steve, thank you very much for joining us today. Congrats on a solid quarter. Why don't you give us a broad overview on what the quarter looked like?
Thank you for having me today, Martin. This was a quarter where we started to see the fruits of our labor in cost control, increased margin, and of course, that hit the bottom line. So I'll talk a little bit about the practicalities of a merger or an acquisition. So on February 18th, 2022, just sort of right immediately, we jumped into a business where the gross margins were rather weak. As you would have seen from the financials, the first quarter, we only had 72 days from February 18th to April 30th, and we had margins around 13%. So we had to take we had a deep dive forensically into defining our business. Were we focused on cat litter, animal health products, etc.? Where were the better margins? And also, where did we have duplicity of staff? So it takes about 2 years to effectively combine two different companies with different corporate cultures. Essentially, Progressive Planet was very heavy in R&D. Before the merger, we had about $500,000 in revenue. And of course, we acquired a company with around 19 million in revenue. So I feel like Q3 was the culmination of finishing the analysis of duplicity of roles. And it was the quarter where we really got a handle on gross margin. And it was the first quarter after significant initiatives to trim costs that we saw the fruits of our labor, and the results show for themselves. I'm now confident that we are one entity, not two, and going forward, I think you will see continued G&A costs in similar percentages, R&D in similar percentages, and now our focus going forward is to grow our core business, as well as to enter into emerging business in alternative cements and in alternative healthy fertilizers.
The margin improvement, was that strictly driven by efficiencies, or were you able to do some focus on your more profitable products, or like sort of manage your product mix, or is it a bit of both? Or can you talk about your general revenue growth and how that broadly impacted margins?
I certainly can. We've systematically started selling more and more into the US, and we've had a very strong exchange rate in our favor. When we bought the business, we had less than half of our business was US, and now it's over half. So we're very pleased with that. The state of California is our number one state where we do business, and we're continuing to see growth there. With respect to, was the margin or the increase in gross margin a function of increased efficiency or in the product mix? It was a combination of both. When we acquired Absorbent, we required all of the staff to train in lean manufacturing to get a minimum of a white belt. And then our management team trained to get their green belts. And so we have a corporate culture of continuous improvement. And we're really gelling in that respect. We're attempting to automate more processes where humans are lifting heavy bags and having that done by robots. And we invested in a new PLC system in the last 6 months. We had a fairly antiquated system as the legacy system when we acquired the business. But in addition, we've also been very careful with our product mix. We mine materials, diatomaceous earth and bentonite clay and zeolite. And by far the lightest of these materials is our diatomaceous earth. And for that reason, we can truck far more diatomaceous earth-based products to further distances with lower trucking costs. In our DE products, our two big sellers are our Red Lake Earth, which is an animal feed additive for anti-caking, as well as our activated barn fresh. And our activated barn fresh is a patented product, and we've really seen tremendous growth in our margins in the activated barn fresh as our cost for one of our main ingredients has declined significantly since COVID days, citric acid. So we've been able to benefit from procuring that at a much lower price. We've also been very careful to manage the amount of inventory that we carry. As a mining company, industrial mining, our number one inventory cost is our materials. And then we have to buy chemicals, citric acid and sodium carbonate, which helps with clumping cat litter, as well as bags. But we've really worked hard to reduce our working capital. We typically never have anything on our operating line of credit, which avoids the interest on the operating line of credit by managing our working capital. So it's been a combination of focusing on selling high margin products, continuing to find efficiencies, eliminate waste, and enhancing the amount of automation in our plant. And we're not finished yet. A key metric for us is our revenue per employee, and we have internal KPIs with respect to those numbers. And we've set ourselves some goals for the end of fiscal 2025, which would be in about 14 months from now, of where we want to be on a revenue per employee. But it's a combination of both.
Are you able to talk about expectations? Well, we haven't closed off fiscal 2024 yet, which is, I guess, two months away, or yeah, shortly away here. For, let's say, the rest of the calendar year, I'm assuming the biggest gross margin improvements have been you've more than doubled your gross margin. I assume there's not just enough room in the business to double their gross margins again. But are you near kind of your expected operating levels, or do you still have some room for margin expansion at this point?
There's a small amount of room for gross margin if you were to look at companies in the industrial mineral business. On some of the big companies bigger than us, publicly traded, and you look at their gross margins, they're typically around 26%. So at over 32, we're very pleased. We would see our growth being more in, now that we are comfortable, that we've got our costs under control. We would see our growth in our bottom line being as a result of increasing our sales more so than our gross margin, although we are always looking for ways to reduce our costs, reduce our G&A, reduce our variable cost. For example, we spent heavily on R&D over the last couple of years, and if you see for the Q3, it was about $72,000. So we've dramatically cut back on external contractors for R&D and have internalized much of the work, with most of the heavy lifting being done on developing IP. The patents are filed for pause glass, etc.
On the revenue growth side, are you expanding into new markets in the US? Is it launching new products, or it's just using your existing distribution and sales channels more effectively, getting one product into a customer and then adding on to that? Can you talk about, and are you able to talk about, should we expect revenue in like single digit revenue growth year over year, or could it be double digit, or any guidance you could provide in that way?
So I don't want to provide guidance yet. I don't think we are mature enough as a company to provide realistic guidance. I'm a little uncomfortable.
All right.
I am comfortable that we've controlled our costs, and now we have a very concerted focus. When you talk about ways that you can affect your bottom line, the fastest way that you can affect your bottom line is to control your costs. You can't snap your fingers and double your revenues, but you can, in essence, make decisions on cost control and cost cutting, which have very quick effects, which we have seen. We alerted the market several months ago that we had undergone cost cutting initiatives. Originally, we talked about 800,000 in savings, and now it's much higher than that with the sort of the final cuts that we made. So our focus going forward now will be on building organically, growing the business, and we've invested in new sales personnel. We've had a real focus on training and finding people that are technically trained. So I would suggest to you that we will continue to make an investment in our sales department to grow our business. And now that we have effectively controlled our costs, the next major initiative for us is organic growth in the business, and that's where we will be focusing our attention. Again, I guess I may be repeating myself, but it's the first step was to control costs, and then the next step is to focus. I will say that we don't believe that we are anywhere near penetrating the market for our animal feed anti-caking properties of our Red Lake Earth. We are nowhere near to penetrating the entire market for activated barn fresh. We brought on one new customer on activated barn fresh in the past quarter, and it significantly improved our bottom line. And we see that we can continue to grow the sales of these DE-based products simply because we haven't really penetrated markets as good as we can.
So it's a focus on the ship is in order, so now it's time to grow the sales and distribution and drive product through the facilities.
Absolutely. Another thing I'd like to talk about, because I've seen some online chatter. I don't generally read the online chatters, but maybe once every month or two I look to see, and there's been a lot of speculation about the work we're doing with pyrogenesis. So I'll provide an update on that. So our original contract with them required them to deliver 500 grams of finished glass powder. With pause glass, post-consumer glass, when you drink from a glass, the chemical composition of that is very different than if you want to purposely make a glass for cement. So pause glass contains sodium, it contains calcium and magnesium, as well as its number one ingredient, silica. When we take silica quartz, it's 99% silica, then we know what we're starting with at a much higher silica content. The silica content of post-consumer glass is about 74%. So pyrogenesis, they delivered us the 500 grams, and we'd never ground this material before. So we tried a series of techniques, wet and dry grinding, and so on. And we set the mortar cubes for our ASTM compression testing yesterday. They will be demolded today, and then they will cure as all of these cubes do in a water bath, and we will crush them. The first ones will be crushed next Tuesday, and then 3 weeks later at 28 days, we will do a second crush. So with respect to providing the market with the results of the actual cementitious properties of the material produced in our collaboration with pyrogenesis, essentially 28 days from today, we will do the cylinder crushes. I will also discuss that typically with pozzolans, you see a big strength gain at about 14 to 28 days. There's not a lot of early strength. So we won't publish the 7-day numbers, but we will publish the 7 and 28-day numbers once we have done the 28-day crushes. So for those people following us, we took a little longer to prepare as we tested various techniques to grind the material to the smallest size that we felt was feasible. Set the mortar cubes yesterday, and the clock is now ticking for us to be able to see the real results after 2 years of whether we have a very effective and interesting pozzolan, a man-made pozzolan made from crystalline silica. So that's exciting for us, and I just wanted to provide some guidance as to when the investment community could expect. A few days after we get those results, we will prepare a press release and discuss those.
All right. So some news coming out, and that would make it mid-April or so.
Yes, and I'd also like to talk. The global cement industry is over $360 billion a year. And the consumption of Portland cement is increasing dramatically because concrete is good for hurricane proofing. It's good for being non-combustible. And so as we see climate change and the effects of same, I saw an article in the Globe and Mail this week that in Quebec, one of the major insurance companies is no longer insuring houses that are in a flood zone. And as we see, and in California, there are certain areas you can no longer build stick frame wooden structures because of their susceptibility to burn down with forest fires. So the consumption, the 360 billion plus annual cement is only going to get bigger. And in 2011, Portland cement, there were 62 million tons of Portland cement produced in America, in the USA in 2011. In 2021, it was 92 million. So there was a 30 million ton increase from 62 million to 92 million just in the USA from 2011 to 2021. The two technologies that we are pursuing, one is using post-consumer glass, and it's pause glass. At some point, there is a finite amount of post-consumer glass. So 2 years ago, when we went to pyrogenesis, it was very much the second most common material in the Earth's crust is crystalline silica. But crystalline silica does not act as a glue. It's only amorphous silica. And the way that you make amorphous silica is to melt and cool crystalline silica, beach sand, quartz, etc., rapidly. So our idea with pyrogenesis was to take the second most common material in the world, crystalline silica, and convert it to amorphous. And we originally thought it would take about a year, and it took about 2 years, and there were enormous challenges. And my hat is off to pyrogenesis for not taking no for an answer and to figuring this out. And ultimately, when we were delivered this powder, now we have to determine whether it works or not as a cement or a glue. And we will have those results in 28 days from today. But from the perspective of blue sky, natural pozzolans are there. They were deposited by Mother Nature. They are finite resources, but one of the most, we can't say infinite, but one of the most common materials, second most common in the Earth's crust, is crystalline silica. And if we are able to perfect this and economically manufacture this material, we have a clause that Pyrogenesis and Progressive Planet become partners, with us having 2/3 of the business and them having 1/3, and we have an exclusive on that technology, so nobody else can use it. So it's a real big deal for us. We'll have to sit and wait, but the ramifications of this working are very significant.
Since you started on the topic of the cement side of things and the pause glass with post-consumer glass, that initiative with Lafarge and the research that's and the development that's going on there. Can you give us a brief update on what's happening there and what we can generally expect from that side of the business over the coming quarters? What sort of milestones or news one could expect to see?
For sure. So we are actively working on pause glass in our own facility, and we are scaling up to build pilot facilities in Kamloops in 2024. There's some equipment under order. We did apply for some large grants federally that there's been a pause or a hold on the federal institution that issues grants for pilot plants. So we've pivoted, and we are underway in designing and building pilot facilities that allow us to grind glass and also to utilize the wastewater, the patents that are pending that we filed, and that I mentioned earlier about most of the money has been spent. We filed our patents globally. The technology that is novel is that we sequester CO2 with our wastewater and essentially create solid materials. That's well underway. We're producing solid carbon-based materials, precipitated calcium carbonate, right now in Kamloops, and we're working on that actually as a potential additive back into cement as well. All of this work is underway. We speak on a weekly basis to Lafarge. They've been a fantastic partner. Their relationship to us is that they will take a set amount of material per year and utilize it in their operations. That's always been the case, and nothing has changed. So in essence, I expect to be able to announce the production of pause glass on a pilot scale in calendar year 2024. I don't have exact dates. We're still working on design, and I will keep the market updated on a regular basis.
How about switching topics to the other blue sky opportunity on your agricultural fertilizer products? Can you give us an update on what's going on there and how things are progressing?
Absolutely. So in the ag tech, we actually have a patented product that, and I referenced it earlier, activated burn fresh. It's one of our top sellers, and it has very good margin, and we have 9.5 years left on our US patent. So we are really focused on growing and penetrating the market for organic chickens. So it's organic broiler houses that utilize activated burn fresh as a manner to mitigate ammonia and make it healthier for the chickens and, of course, the farm workers to breathe in chicken burns. So we are looking to grow that business. That product has been offered for almost a decade by Absorbent, which is now Progressive Planet Products after the acquisition. We produced with a large international company that will remain unnamed 60 tons of a product called Carbon CA, and the CA stands for calcium. And that product is a combination of leonardite from our diatomaceous earth mine. We have a layer of leonardite, which is a very carbon rich. It also contains sulfur, and it's a low pH, so it's very similar to peat in that it's a low pH source of carbon. So Carbon CA, we produce 60 tons. The majority of that 60 tons was applied across the prairies by farmers in the fall, and there is a small number of tons left for spring application. Unfortunately, we can't snap our fingers and say that it was extremely well received, because the farmers need to go through a growing season. So we'll expect feedback on Carbon CA after the harvest this year, and we will know if there will be a market for us. It is a relatively simple material to produce. and our internal testing showed that there was a dramatic increase in the amount of available calcium in carbon CA as opposed to straight applying limestone. So carbon CA is leonardite plus limestone. It's very simple, but in order to produce it, you have to have a supply of limestone and you have to have a supply of leonardite. And in our case, we have access to both, one internally and one Lafarge has a source of limestone. So we were able to utilize their limestone for this 60-ton trial. Our carbon CK, we did try it. We produced 20 tons. It ended up that we did not have sufficient interest to produce that, and we announced that. Not everything that we do will be a success, but we will continue to try. And some things are accepted by the consumer, by the farming community, and some aren't. In the case of carbon CA, we didn't deem that there was sufficient demand for us to continue. We're very excited about carbon CA, but we have a wait and see. We have invested in some additional pilot scale infrastructure for ourselves to make pellets at our facility with a minimum amount of water through a machine called a roller compactor. And we continue to try new blends and so on as we are made aware of potential markets. But the big one that we are sitting and waiting on is, of course, our carbon CA. We have a very large resource of leonardite. When we test pit it, it's there for square kilometers. And we've been stockpiling it for years. And we hope we found a beneficial use for it. But well, there's a wait and see.
All right. Question here from the audience. Do you envision moving to using your alternative fertilizer products in broad acres across the prairies where you can benefit from the desired goal of 30% reduction in GHG emissions? And if so, when?
So I'll just speak specifically for carbon CA. There were multiple farmers, all broad acre in the prairies, that applied carbon CA. And so we've already started that. That is the reference to a 30% reduction is a reduction in nitrogen. So we carbon CA is not a nitrogen-based fertilizer. It's a source of carbon, sulfur, and calcium. So we do not have anything that we are producing right now that addresses reduction of nitrogen, other than the fact that these are natural products, and when you increase the biological activity in your soil and when you increase the carbon, it's generally accepted that you can use less nitrogen. But we are not directly producing alternate nitrogen fertilizers to date.
And roughly when will we get the results back of the farmers' feedback on the effectiveness of the carbon CA?
After harvest.
Okay, so in the fall.
Typically, calcium is applied by farmers, not every year, every 5 to 7 years. And so we found farmers that it was their time to apply calcium. And our own internal testing with third parties indicated a dramatic increase in the amount of available calcium when it was combined with our leonardite. And so now we will wait and see and get feedback from those farmers. Ultimately, the ultimate proof of the viability of any soil amender or fertilizer is, well, there's sort of two. There's your crop yield and of course the health of your soil. So we'll wait for feedback from the farmers on both, their soil health and their yields for the acres which they applied carbon CA, either in October of last year or very shortly when they applied this spring for some farmers that will be applying it this spring.
All right. So the last part of the year is going to be pretty exciting for a progressive planet with the ag news coming back and then the pause glass starting up and running by the end of the year.
Yes.
I think we've covered the main topics. One thing that's always fun to chat about, so I'm not too sure how much you can say about it. Your investment in ZS2 in Calgary, is there anything you can share with the community about that?
Certainly, we remain an interested shareholder. We do supply ZS2 with zeolite. There's some discussions of supplying Posglass to them. We're very excited to continue to work with them. Our investment is we own about 2.5% of the company. In our financials, we had a small write down on the investment based on the fact that they did a raise at $1.65. The prior one was at $2. We all know that the investor climate has changed very much for microcap. They got a very strong management team, a very deep R&D team, and they're scaling up. My understanding is sales are growing. I'm not a member of their board. We're an interested minority shareholder, and of course, their success will result in us selling them more materials. So we certainly wish them the greatest of success as they grow their company under the guidance of their CEO, Scott Jenkins, and their board of directors.
All right, that's great. I appreciate the feedback there. I think we've hit the main points. We were talking about the last quarter, expectations on the coming quarters, and then your big blue sky initiatives. Is there anything you'd like to anything we missed, or anything you'd like to reiterate or highlight before we wrap things up?
Certainly, we have a series of natural pozzolan deposits. So Posglass is post-consumer glass. That's sort of one of the three pillars of cement. The work we're doing with Pyrogenesis Canada, that is a second leg of cement innovation. But then there are the various deposits that we have, and we've had some large cement companies internationally request samples of several of the materials from two of our natural pozzolan deposits, and we are hoping that we can start to do business supplying natural pozzolan to some of the big cement, the large international cement companies. And then finally, as we gain expertise, we are also working on developing additives and so on to strengthen natural pozzolans. We've got a real deep talent between our cement techs in-house, as well as some of our contractors that have been long-term working with us. And we see potential to use the expertise that we're gaining to help to enhance other people's natural pozzolan deposits under potential royalty situations. So I look at the cement innovation in 4 specific legs: natural pozzolans that we own, Posglass, the work with Pyrogenesis to convert quartz silica, and developing solutions or additives to enhance both our own natural pozzolans as well as third-party pozzolans. So all of these things are keeping us very busy in our cement innovation.
Excellent. Well, with that, Steve, thank you very much. I appreciate the time and the update. A lot of great information there. Have a great day, and I'm looking forward to getting further update as things progress.
And the next time I'm in Vancouver, I'll let you buy me lunch.
Sounds good. It's a deal.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.